Hey everybody, it's Khara Crossweight Brindle, familiar face on the channel today. I have my good friend Cathy with us. Before she introduces herself, I want you to know why I brought Cathy in. I had some thoughts. Know there's some scams going around in our community. I feel like there's still plenty of people in our community who don't know about those scams. And Cathy is one of the go-to people to track this. This is one of her expertise, one of her specialties. So, Cathy, for folks who don't know you, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you for that. Thanks for this talk. This is so important. So I'm Cathy Wilson and therapist in Littleton, Colorado. I have developed this accidental specialty, so to speak, in what happens to a person after a scam. And I mean, what happens emotionally to a person after a scam. And yes, so I've kind of become the person to come to talk about how can I support this person, or is this a scam? Those kind of questions and that sort of thing. So
Mhm.
it's important work. There just isn't very much support on the emotional side for when
Yeah.
this has happened to a person.
And
So
much needed. So yeah, viewers of this video, you'll learn a little bit more about Cathy's offerings here as we go through. But what spurred this outreach to Cathy is I had a colleague reach out and say, "Hey, is this a scam? Is this a video?" Again, offline, I told Cathy, "I'm not sure why they asked me," but luckily I've taken Cathy's course, so I felt like I could at least say something. Um, which is this particular one was somebody who was spoofing someone else's phone number, which happens where it looks like a professional number is calling, but it's not them at all, or it sounds like them and it's not actually them. Scams have
mhm.
gotten pretty elaborate and sneaky, I guess. But all that to say, there are a couple scams that I'm aware of that Cathy is also tracking in the therapeutic community, which is why we wanted to create this video for therapists to say, here are some scams to be aware of. Cathy, what would be the first one we should talk about with folks?
Let's talk about the one that has to do with subpoenas and law enforcement first. That seems to be the most common one these days. So essentially, you get a call and you mentioned spoofing a person's number in what prompted this video. Um, in the law enforcement subpoena scam, I don't have a good name for it. But in that instance, they'll spoof the number of your local law enforcement, police or sheriff's department. And so if you're already familiar with the prefix and the area code for that, then it's familiar as soon as you see the number.
Mm,
And the person says, I'm so and so, officer this, deputy that. And they say, we have a warrant for your arrest because you didn't show up in court today for one of your clients. And so what happens to us when that happens is jolt of fear.
yeah,
Like, I don't want to ever appear in court anyway. And oh my goodness, how could I have missed this? And I've
right,
disappointed the
right.
client. This emotional rush of fear and distress hits us. And that is one of the things scammers do to disarm us, to um, take advantage of us. And so the story goes, and of course, there's variations to this a little bit, but essentially, they try to get you to give them money, send them money, all to erase or eliminate this warrant that's out for your arrest. And in actuality, they are not going to call us for that. But in that instant, when you're afraid, you don't think about that. So being familiar with this as a kind of scam that hits mental health therapists, there's your first thing, your first defense, so to speak, is to be aware that this is one of them.
Absolutely. And this one's been happening for years and years. And so I know our community, as people go on our social media pages and say, hey, this is happening. I think it continues to bewilder you and I that people don't know about this scam because it's been around for so long. But obviously, it's so effective that they continue to try to target therapists for this. They try to get us in that emotional, fearful place so that we give up thousands of dollars to make a jail time threat not a possibility. So
Right.
I'm appreciative that we can track this, normalize that this is happening, and hopefully people will then have this awareness going forward from this video of like, this is probably why some of us don't answer our phones, if I'm being honest. Of like, I don't have to interact with a scam artist because they're not getting me. They're not actually getting me on the phone.
Right, right. And the time that this call came to me, I actually answered it because I recognized that it was
Mm-hmm.
my sheriff's department. for where I live. And recognizing that, so in the past, before I knew as much as I do about scams now, in the past, I would have thought, oh my goodness, what happened? And I'd be afraid, right? But
Mhm.
when I saw it, it was just maybe a year ago. So I was well into this work and I thought, oh, this is a scammer. I can't wait to hear this. And so there was
So
that.
you
So I
answered.
just, right. So I answered, even though I'm with you, if I don't recognize the number, I don't answer it first, and makes it hard to
Yeah,
manage our potential client calls, but
it
we do
does.
our
That's the
best.
one challenge. Yeah. So like there's workarounds for all of that. But yeah, I mean, if they're really preying on people in that moment, that urgency, obviously picking up the phone causes this to be more of a possibility. The spoofing is something obviously that's going on everywhere. So even as I started our video today, I said a colleague had reached out. It actually had spoofed another therapist number for them. So like when I Googled it, which sometimes we do, just
Mhm.
curious who called us, when they
Right.
Googled it, it was another therapist number. So I want that to be named here in this video also because I think it leads to a different conversation, which is, are we as colleagues saying, hey, I want you to be aware that this happened, or hey, I got a weird, questionable voicemail from your number. Is that something we should be doing for each other so that we're aware that someone's spoofing our business? Because that was their business number, right? So that's
Right.
what I encouraged this person in our network to do, was to like send a gentle email to that clinician and say, hey, I got a weird, questionable voicemail from your number. Just want you to be aware. I would want that. I mean, what are your thoughts, Cathy? Would you want someone to tell you if someone was spoofing your business?
I would definitely want someone to tell me. I I work hard to, protect my reputation in the community, so to speak, right? And so,
Yeah.
yes, anything like that, I would want to know, and I think most of us would.
Right. So
Um,
we could do something about it versus, oh, now I look like an unprofessional person to my network because someone got a call that wasn't me.
right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly, exactly. And one thing that comes to mind as you say that is our work tends to make us somewhat isolated. We could be very isolated if we allowed that to happen. And I'm a big, and I know you are too, big supporter of having a community around us to share this kind of information and so much more. But that isolation is a risk factor for us. It makes us vulnerable if we aren't, talking to other therapists and hearing about what's happening to them, then we might not know about this. It isn't just newer therapists, in other words, right?
Yeah.
It's
That isolation is a
many.
factor. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah, so that's where I was grateful, even though I kind of jested here in this video that that colleague reached out to me. I'm glad they reached out to someone. I wasn't sure why it was me and not you, but
right.
the hope is obviously they felt supported of like, here's what you could do with this information. And now so many people will have this from this video. So if we
Mhm.
think about that second most common, I know there's tons of scams out there, but most common scam for therapists that targets us, what else is on your mind?
So the other one that's pretty common for us is a scam where someone emails or texts. I think I'm not sure I've ever heard of any of them when it's a phone call. It's usually email or text, and they say, maybe my three daughters are going to be, in Colorado at this time, this summer coming up, and I'd like to set up several sessions for them to work on self-esteem, life transitions, right? Whatever, maybe words from your website. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to pay up front for all of that. But this is one of those kind of scams where they send you a check with with an arrangement with you that you're going to send back part of the money for some reason. And
Mm-hmm.
and then their check does not go through, and whatever money you sent them is you're out that money.
Yeah. That it
And
went through for them. They got that money.
right, right, absolutely. And so the hallmarks of it are it's more than one people, it's several sessions, like 10 weeks of sessions twice a week. I think that was the one, that was the
Mm-hmm.
numbers associated with the one I got years ago. And and then they begin to talk about, well, I need to send you a check for this much because I need you to pay the driver, right? Or something like that
Mm,
for them. So it it's one of those, the feeling that I had when I had someone contact me with that was, this feels a little too good to be true. Like that, this would be fantastic if that was really a thing.
Mm,
But and because it felt so odd to me, I asked someone.
yeah,
And
to know that it was a scam. And I've
right,
received it too. And I don't know if it's just my jadedness at this stage of my career, but now it just sounds like a lot of work, right? Of like that much sessions when you don't really know what they truly need, but also this idea of the back and forth of I have to send you money, you have to send me money. Like most of us are like, I don't have time for that. Like I'm in the midst of working with my clients, like front and center right here.
right.
But that might just be my own burnout speaking in this video right now.
It could
I'm like,
be. It
no,
could
thank
be.
you.
Right?
Um,
Yep. It
but
does
yeah,
sound
so
like a lot of work though.
it is, yeah, and thank you for that validation. So, like, what do you think gets people to like go through these hoops that they're
Mhm.
articulating? Is it that it feels like a lot of money? Does it feel like it's like a good fit because they pulled those words from the website? What do you think makes this one so prevalent?
I think that's one that they pull words from your website. And so it resonates for you, or there might be something else about it that resonates in that way, like the work that would potentially be involved. For me, when I got this text, I probably got a couple of them, but the first one was the major one for me where it really gave me pause. I was really early in private practice,
Mm,
struggling still. I had not gotten out of the red yet. And so for me, being so new and needing to build my practice, there was a desperation, like a feeling of
mm,
desperation, like, oh, I hope this is true. It doesn't sound very true, but I hope so because I could really use this client right now. And
yeah.
so that draw was pretty powerful. And, I exchanged a few texts with them, but it was pretty quickly apparent that this was not upfront. So,
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your vulnerability of like they're catching people in an emotional state or a vulnerable state themselves of like, I'm new to private practice. I'm trying to build an income, trying to build a caseload. Like any of those factors are very human, right? To be like they're capturing us in that moment of this
mhm,
sounds great. I'm saying, yes, I need this right now. So I
right.
appreciate you sharing. Like that's what showed up for you at that stage of your career as
Mhm.
I mean, this is why it's so effective for them to target us is like they're kind of speaking to our emotional heartstrings or they're pulling on like the financial ones.
Right.
That's just two examples.
Absolutely. Right.
Mm,
And, if someone came to me with that same thing, and even if I was established, but they came to me with a trauma story, which is most of my work is related to trauma, then it could have pulled on my heartstrings quite a bit and made me give it more thought than I might have otherwise.
yeah,
So,
down. And
yeah.
so obviously we can normalize that for our viewers of like, this is how they're so effective. This is why scammers get what they want because they're really pulling on the emotions of us. So I know
Mhm.
you had at least three things that you wanted our viewers to think about if like this were to happen. Kind of three tips. You want to speak about some of those?
I do. I want to mention just a couple of other scams real
Oh
quick
yeah.
that they don't target us specifically, but we do get them frequently. Businesses get them, that sort of thing. So there's one, and you and I just talked about this. I received a letter in the mail yesterday that was, you need to renew your domain name. It looks like a bill. It looks like an invoice, but it's not actually. And it's not at
Mhm.
all from the company that does my hosting for my
Yeah.
website, right? But it looks like an invoice. And so it's very easy to think, oh, I didn't realize I had this extra cost too, and pay it, right? Same thing with some of the other targets are you're not in compliance with such and such legal requirement by the labor board or whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? Or Google listings. I still get calls related, and they have nothing to do with Google, and yeah. So
Yeah. I know
what's
the one top of mind for me is Secretary of State 'cause we talked about that offline. of like,
Yes.
oh, for $75, we'll file your business listing with the Secretary of State in Colorado. And it's like, you go on yourself, you file it for $10. You don't have someone else do it for 75. So, but yeah, like I think that's the cleverness is they like try to pull something that is truly relevant. There is an expense to it and it's not in our mind because it's once a year. And so we just see it show up and we might mindlessly pay it thinking, oh, that's just the bill I forgot about.
Right, right. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's those, I thought those were worth mentioning because they do come up fairly frequently in people calling me to say, I got this letter. Is this a thing? I think it might be a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, it is a scam. Good for you. Right. And,
Like they just want that validation from you of like, just tell me if I got this right. I actually
yeah,
just had this image of you having like a Facebook page or something like, here's the local scam, like here's my update here. Yep, that's a scam. Yep, that's a scam.
right, right.
So you don't have to
Yep,
pick up your phone every time someone asks, is this a scam?
yep.
Yeah, that's wild. Okay. So those are
So
some things for people to think about. Obviously,
yeah,
I'm getting those letters, you're getting those letters all the
absolutely.
time that are not real.
Right.
So yeah, so as someone is thinking about this, those
Mhm.
tips, what are we wanting them to do?
Right. So the first two have to do with educating yourself. So one, when you hear about a particular kind of scam, pay attention to that. Check it out, get familiar enough that you'd probably remember it if someone came at you with that kind of a scam. And there are a lot. They are very adaptable. The scammers are so good at this, and they're always thinking of a new way, a a little bit of a twist on an old one, old type of scam, for instance. So staying up to date and listening for that on social media or with your colleagues or your family, etc. And the another piece of education is understanding the techniques that they use. So the more you learn about these techniques, and there's psychological biases, there's persuasion techniques, there's using circumstances that are vulnerabilities for us or creating circumstances to make a vulnerability. So that scam with the law enforcement one, they're creating a vulnerability by scaring you with this
Right.
possibility. And so being aware of the techniques that they use will help you also recognize that in the moment. Or if you get a call, text, whatever it is, and there's a moment where you say, whoa, this is weird. There's your moment when you think, could it be a scam? And I'll give you another story. Okay. I got a text this morning. I sent so many texts myself this morning, 10 to 15 things to arrange scheduling, blah, 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 all kinds of stuff. And then I get this random text from a number that isn't in my phone as a contact. And it says, I can't do 10, but I could do 8 or 9. And I thought, okay, I think I did offer a 10 a.m. to someone, but I don't know this number. And it's not associated with this is a person I know well, but I didn't know
Mm,
they just changed phones. So an odd text, someone just saying hi, that's that's a potential scam as well. So
mm.
back to education. Sorry, I got sidetracked there.
No,
So
that's relevant because I get those too, where it's like, hi, and I'm like, I don't know who this is, and I don't have the energy to be like, who is this? Like, just no.
right, right. And and so just keeping yourself educated and knowing those techniques, those are all going to be helpful to help you identify it if a scammer comes at you. And it's almost inevitable that a scammer's going to come at you at some point. Multiple
Hmm.
scammers, even.
Yeah.
It's
So
getting
being prepared, educated, this makes sense of like, let's like armor you up a little bit with some of the things you should be aware of so you're not as susceptible to the scam.
right. So
Hmm.
warning signs are kind of a thing. So that thing about the text that I got, it was kind of enough that I thought, okay, this could be real. And um, someone saying, hi, did you just call me? Well, I didn't just call someone, but the, our values will say parts of our personality we feel compelled to answer and say, no, I think you've got the wrong number or something like that. Don't even do that, because part of what they're doing is trying to verify your number, perhaps, right?
Mm-hmm.
But other warning signs are anytime they're asking for payment in gift cards or getting Bitcoin involved and you're not very familiar with any cryptocurrency. I should say cryptocurrency and not Bitcoin, right? Anything to do with cryptocurrency and you're not familiar with that, that could be a warning sign, and you should do some extra checking on those things. So those ways of educating yourself on the warning signs, the techniques they use, and the common scams, that's all important.
Absolutely. So I
Yeah.
know there's probably lots of ideas you have for them, but you've also created courses for this purpose to help people feel like they can track what's going on when it comes to scams evolving and the language and the techniques they have. So I feel like
Right.
this is the perfect opportunity to plug what you have going on because I want people to know about it. So what do you want them to find?
So I do have courses. I created courses for supportive people. So there's one for mental health professionals, there's one for advocates and those kind of roles in a supporting role. And then there's one specifically for family and friends as well. And so those courses, they give you a lot on these techniques that scammers use. And in fact, and I know I posted about this on Facebook this week, but that is the part of this course I'm most proud of, because it prepares you too, even though you're getting ready to support people, it prepares you too to recognize those things.
Oh
And so,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
but in the mental health one, I have a clinical section. It has lots about the potential effects for a person, because they're much wider spread than we might initially think. It's like, oh, that's a bad thing that happened. I'm sorry it happened, but the wound goes so deep when you've been scammed in so many ways. So
Yeah.
understanding all that's great. And then for the people who have been scammed, I have several videos on my YouTube channel, and I get a lot of good feedback from people. Sad, right? Like I feel so bad
Mm-hmm.
for people, many, well, all of them really. And those videos seem to be really helpful. So if you know someone who's been scammed, please send them there. There isn't anything free and available to the public that's like it.
Yeah.
So, and then my
Meeting
book.
that need.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna make sure we put all the links below for the courses, the YouTube channel for folks to go that have been scammed to get this resource for free, and then of course the book itself. Yeah, I feel like you've met a need that people aren't speaking about, and there's a lot of shame around, so that's probably part of why it's silent.
Yep.
And as someone who's taken your course for the mental health professionals, I learned a lot. People need to have your course so they can support people, but also learn and be educated on the things for themselves, their family, and their clients. Like I felt like I learned a lot to tell my family as well as the people I was serving professionally of, hey, here's what to look out for. Because unfortunately, some of my family members have been scammed, not the scams we talked about today, but other ones that are also just as clever.
Right.
So yeah, so I know that one of the reasons you're willing to come on here is because as a financial therapist, you saw a bridge in some of the work we do because you're holding space for some of that emotional impact, and then I might be holding space for the financial impact as well as some of the emotional impact,
Right.
which is true. I might have colleagues
Mhm.
come in and say, "Man, I did pay that $3,000 to get out of jail when was told I didn't go to court or failed to come to court,"
Absolutely.
um, which is devastating on so many levels.
Yes. Yes, it really is. It's very violating.
Mm,
And one could argue that a romance scam might be the ultimate in feeling violated by a scammer, but they all are. They
mhm.
all are.
Yeah.
So, yep, so there's a lot potentially for a person to work on. And for many people too, if they have trauma in their past, unfortunately, it often gets activated again and brought to the surface again if a scam has happened to that person. So there is a lot to know and work on with a person
Mhm.
after. after such an experience.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm so grateful that you created this content for folks that are like, how do I help? How do I help in a way that's actually helpful versus reinforcing that hurt, that trauma, that
yes.
stigma that shows up with scams, and being a victim of a scam. So, as I mentioned, viewers, I'll put all of the links below for Cathy. Final thoughts, Cathy, on a topic that is so vast and broad, but like, we touched on just a couple things today that therapists should know. Final
Right.
thoughts.
I guess my final thoughts would be, if this has happened to you, if you're listening to this and it happened to you, this isn't your fault. This is a crime that happens to people, and there's so much victim blaming that
Mm,
happens around this, so much stigma, that part of the work that might be helpful to you is to acknowledge that piece and remind yourself it isn't your fault. You are the victim of a crime, and to work on your healing from that point forward.
mm,
So,
beautifully said. Yeah, that's like even just knowing they're not alone, that other people have experienced this, that they can continue to do some healing work. They don't have to do it by themselves. All of that's probably pretty important at this stage of if it just happened. Here's a little ray of hope
yes.
amidst all of that. Absolutely. Well, Cathy, thank you so much for speaking to your expertise. I know you said that it was kind of a surprise to go with this direction in your profession, but like much needed. I mean, you're the what my go-to. I'm sure all of the people watching this video, you'll be their go-to until we have more people informed of what you're tracking and trained in the material that you've created. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
All right. Thank you too. All right.
Yeah, viewers, stay tuned for more videos. I'm sure we'll be back with other things, but for now, you have at least 3 scams from this video to be tracking for yourself. Continue to educate yourself. You've heard that loud and clear from Cathy and I today. Best of luck, and we'll see you in future videos. See you next time.
Thanks.